Hello and welcome to yet another edition of the Sustainability Track here on African Renaissance TV with me, Mohamed Bibaji. Today's topic of discussion is the transportation systems and sustainability. To have a discussion around this, I have a very important guest to help me form a conversation around this. And this is someone who does not really need an introduction, but for the sake of formality, I will allow him to take a quick introduction, and from there we have a conversation. Mr. Jammeh, thank you for honoring our invitation to come onto the Sustainability Track here on the African Renaissance TV.
Thank you very much, Mohamed, for this invitation. It's a rare opportunity to be here with you. My name is Jammeh. I'm a Gambian. I was a student at the University of the Gambia. I did urban planning and designing. Later, I went to Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology to actually read roads and transportation engineering. So I'm back working with the University of the Gambia currently. Thank you.
Thank you once more. That is a good background, especially for the topic of discussion we have today at hand, transportation systems and sustainability. This is a topic that we cannot exhaust without fully talking about sustainability, and then that is one of the aims of the Sustainability Track show here. When you look at transportation, it's one of the key ingredients as far as infrastructure is concerned. And then infrastructure in itself is one of the most important components of development. So to kickstart this conversation, we would first want to go with the first question, which is what is a good transportation system? We want to establish a point, and from there we can have a good conversation around it.
Thank you very much, Mohamed. A good transportation system. Transportation, we have to first establish, is a system. It is not just getting into a vehicle and going to where you want to go. You have the mode of transport, you have the means of transportation, and you have the terminals, you have the depots, you have the seaports. They are all part of the infrastructure. So a good transportation system is a system that looks at every component of that system. When it has to do with a depot, when it has to do with a node, when it has to do with a port, how are the aspects being properly positioned? For instance, if a public transportation system, if the depot is not good, when passengers actually come in, they have to stand and wait for vehicles for like 20, 30 minutes. So that the infrastructure of a depot is part of the transport system for comfort, for safety of commuters. So it's not only about the mode of transport, which is the vehicle, the aeroplane or a ship, but any other thing that actually supports that is all part and parcel of the transport system. So a good one is what looks at each and every one of them. When it has to do with the infrastructure, the GTSU depot, for instance, we are interested in the depot. When the clients come, do they have a place to sit? Do we have infrastructures for ticketing? Do we have comforts? Do we have safety of passengers? So that's all inclusive.
It's an all-inclusive
package. So it's not just a vehicle in which we just fly through, but where we actually alight, where we actually pick up the vehicles, all those things are part and parcel of the transport systems. So it has to be, it's multifaceted actually. So we have to look at which element of it are we actually interested in actually discussing. But transport is not just the mode of transportation. It's the infrastructure that supports it, the staff that works in there, because it's customer care. The comfort, the buses, do you have the ACs there? That's comfort. The reliability, how long do we wait for vehicles? The accessibility, if I go out in the next 5-10 minutes, will I have a vehicle? The predictability, if I leave here, how long will I get to Brikama? I must be able to predict my travel. So it is all part of the transport system. So a good and a sustainable transport system, it's a system that actually pass all these checks. Then we can be able to grade it as a good transport system. We can have very good vehicles on the road, but the access is difficult. You go to a main road, you wait for a vehicle for 1 hour. The access is a problem. Comfort is a problem, probably. You have that, after that 1 hour, you have a vehicle. I mean, people are squeezed in that vehicle like pieces of sardine. So that is a problem. It's a question.
That does not make it efficient.
That doesn't make it efficient. For instance, when you're able to get that again, along the way, the driver is driving like a mad someone. The safety components also, we are interested in that. Are people safe? Is the driver actually looking at the road signages? What is the speed control the driver actually doing? So it's a broad angle in which we can be interested in different elements of that.
That question is important. I ask this because I want us to have a base, not just to look at the general aspect of it. Like you said, transportation is that huge that we can always look at. But for the sake of today's discussion, I think we would try as much as possible to restrict it to road transport within the African context here, even though we will somehow sometimes touch along other mediums or forms of transportation here. So you talked about an important aspect when it comes to the comfort, when it comes to the time aspect of it, that one should be able to know what exact time should I take here to travel from one end to the next. That is an important part. But when you come to the African context, and even in the Gambia particularly, traffic congestion is one of the huge problems that we are facing. And then, so I want to understand this from your aspect. What do you think can be some of the causes of these traffic congestions that we have?
Thank you very much. You see, traffic congestion is a burning issue, not only in the Gambia. It's a global issue, especially in Africa and in Asia. And it's also multifaceted. There are different elements or different causes of traffic congestion. But to narrow it down to the Gambia, congestion, it's not just something that you see on the road. It has a cause somewhere. Probably you have, first and foremost, you have two types of congestion. We have the recurrent congestion and the non-recurrent congestion. The recurrent congestions are congestions that we see daily.
That are repetitive.
Repetitive. When you go to Westfield, okay, it's going to be congestion. There's going to be congestion. That is recurrent, meaning that we know that's probably due to bottlenecks, probably due to the size of the road, probably due to maybe there are police checkpoints there, but we know that this place is congested. That is recurrent. But non-recurrent are on special events. Probably there is a tour, there's a caravan, there is something that happens on that particular route where we are not expecting, so that congestion happens. So you see, those are the two types. And then for non-recurrent congestions, you can deal with it. Probably there is an oil spillage on the road. You have to actually get rid of it, and then the vehicle start moving. But the most difficult type of congestion to deal with is the recurrent one. That is the burning one, meaning that every day when I get to Westfield, Tabokoto, or whatever, I know that that place is congested. So there are different elements, of course, with respect to the Gambia scenario. For instance, around Tabokoto, Latrikunda, you have, the road is there. People said, the Gambia here, we don't have enough roads. I want to shock you. Look, we have the infrastructure. The road infrastructure is there, but it's being used for other purposes other than mobility.
Okay, that's
the road infrastructure is being used for things that are other than mobility. You have people selling on the road, for instance. You have people parking on the road because the parking spaces are not there. So you are on the lane. People usually park on the lane. That is not designated for parking. But you see people being parked there. So that's a problem.
And it's a major contributor to
it's a contributing factor to congestion. People selling on the we call it bottlenecks. Actually, they are bottlenecks. People selling. You find out that when you are very observant, you just move along the road corridor. You find out that 2 meters is all taken by people selling. The wheelbarrows, these tricycles, they are all parked. If those people get off that space, that's another lane.
Another lane.
So when there's a queue of like 100, 200 meters, we say congestion, there's a particular lane that is being occupied by people who are not drivers, who are not even part of the traffic. So we say, the Gambia is, no, let's deal with those things. But here, when you want to talk about this, they say, they are selling, they are getting their livelihood. But the question is the road built for people to sell on the road?
That is not the purpose of the road.
That's not the purpose of the road. That's not the purpose of the road. The main purpose of the road is mobility. And that's another. So one of the reasons for congestion also, because we have 2 rush hours in this country. The 8 o'clock, people early morning, people go rush to work, and when they are coming back, also they are rushing. These are the 2 times the people experience the recurrent congestion. So, and then there are no traffic management methods that are actually applied. In other countries, there are different mechanisms that have been applied by their governments or state or localities to be able to control the traffic during those peak periods. But here, I'm afraid to tell you that you don't see any of those things happening. For instance, the the issue of the long vehicles, these heavy trucks. You see, they will be in the queue with the smaller vehicles, and that is a problem. When a heavy truck and a small vehicle actually happen to be in the same traffic flow, there's a problem. There's a theory actually around that, propounded by a traffic engineer. His name is Daganso, Carlos F. Daganso, an MIT professor actually. He propounded a theory around, he called slug rabbit theory, meaning the slugs are the long vehicles, they are moving slowly, while the rabbits are the what? The fast
ones.
So that's the heavy trucks and then the small one. So he says when slugs and rabbits are on the highway, there is a tendency of crashes happening. Accidents. We don't call it accident. We call it crashes. We come to that later. Why do we?
Okay.
Actually, there are tendencies of crashes. There are frequency of lane changes because the rabbits will always
they
want
would
to
always
change,
want to overtake
and that's beginning of problems when it comes to what fatalities on our roads. So that causes congestion because when you follow a long, that's transport psychology actually, you follow a long vehicle for like 10-15 minutes as a driver, you get
frustrating.
You become frustrated. So you want to overtake at the slightest opportunity, but where you want to overtake, that might not be the best time to overtake. So when you do that,
And that can result
that can cause
a lot of,
head-on collisions. That head-on collisions is when two vehicles hit each other at the opposite, directly opposite. That's the most dangerous type of crash. Usually, people die in those kind of crashes. And when a driver overtakes a long vehicle, the severity of the crash also can come in because the other driver, the follower, can also use the judgment of the driver that overtakes to also overtake. You see 2-3 vehicles overtake while the leader is messing up, but 2-3 vehicles. So that causes very serious crashes. That long vehicles, I was trying to put it in the context of congestion because it congests. And we need to actually seize them. In other countries, what they do, when it's 7:30 or 7 o'clock, they seize them. They say long vehicles, trucks, whatever, let them seize.
There is a specific time frame that they can use.
So we can come in, how do we actually incorporate those things, especially the new road development, the OIC, how do we actually introduce that concept? Because for the other one, probably somebody will say it's late. But we are building new road infrastructures. Before we open them, we need to sit down as a country and say, look, I think let's apply this traffic management method for us to reduce congestions. So the long vehicles, as I said, they are also part and parcel of the problem. You have the police checkpoints. Police checkpoints, of course, they are part of the congestion. Because when a police stops you, a vehicle stops, it propagates. We call it congestion migration. Congestion migrates. Because when a vehicle stops here, another vehicle stops behind you. So it migrates up to 100 meters. So somebody will be harming, PPP,
from
but
the
you
long
don't know
queue.
that there is somebody, there is a police officer who is checking the lancing of somebody. So these are things. And then if you look at the nature of the country here, especially along the corridor going to Faraba, almost every 1 kilometers you have a police checkpoint. Somebody will say, okay, it has a negative and a positive impact because it's a speed control mechanism also. But it's also part of the negative aspect is a congestion. It also causes congestion.
I would have come to that, the issue of the police and then the traffic congestion. But then, you would agree with me that traffic congestion is not the only problems we have as far as transport is concerned. In fact, specifically road transport.
Yes.
So
Please.
I want us to explore other avenues. What are some other forms of problems or challenges that we face as far as transportation is concerned, road transportation to be specific?
Okay.
Other than congestion, of course.
Oh yes, it's enormous. It's really plenty. So we have the issue of the emission. The track is called Sustainability Track, and the emission is part of the burning issues for all kind of sustainability. Anything that we want to do when there is emission, that's a problem. So transport emissions is huge. Apart from manufacturing industries, transport sector contributes second largest carbon. So that's why we're talking about renewable energy. We're talking about autonomous vehicles. We're talking about electric vehicles now. So we can talk about that. How do we actually incorporate that? But that emission level is important. Another aspect, externality, we call it externalities of transport. The negative impacts transport actually brings down to people. Apart from congestion, it creates carbon. That carbon also have lung issues, disease affecting people. It is a public health concern. One of our colleagues, our senior engineering student, actually does transport and noise pollution. You have sound pollution, noise pollution. You have air pollution. Those are all part of externalities, actually. You have fatality also, crashes, accidents. We don't call it accident. We call it crashes, but so get you on point. So, according to statistics, Center for Disease Control, 1.35 million people die annually globally from road crashes, meaning that 3,700 people die daily out of road crashes, fatalities. So that is huge. That's a concern. That's a huge concern.
And it should be a concern.
It should be a concern. Despite transport, of course, have enormous benefits, but we should not lose the sight of the fact that despite it has that, it has also negative impacts.
And there is an argument that Africa has one of the highest rates as far as accidents are concerned, or
Yes, please.
fatalities are concerned, or
Yes.
you might say crashes are concerned.
Crashes. Just to add some point on that, why I say crashes, accident, because when we believe that when we say accidents, we are trying to kind of introduce something that was inevitable. We can't avoid it. But accidents can be avoided. Crashes can be avoided because most of them are man-made. Most of the crashes, 80 to 90% of crashes or accidents, as you call it, are contributing factors of human behavior. So whatever human behavior is in, we can avoid that. Overspeeding, probably. That's a human behavior. Why are you overspeeding when we say 50 kilometers per hour? Why are you overspeeding? You overspeed,
Like
you kill somebody, you said, oh, so I'm sorry,
prescribed.
it's an accident. Hello, that is not an accident. You've seen the signage. It's 40 kilometers per hour, or it's a residential built-up environment. Kids are crossing. It is a school around. Kids are crossing 50 kilometers per hour. You are moving 80 kilometers per hour. You kill somebody along the way. You say it's an accident. That is not an accident. That's why we have to throw it out. Because when we say accident, oh, it's inevitable. It is designed by God. Or no. Do you understand? Your vehicle is not good. Mechanical aspects of the vehicle.
And you still drive.
The brake is not good. You know, the fog light is not good. The brake light is not good. The visibility is a problem. You drive that vehicle. You have an accident. You say, oh, it's that. No. So we are not saying that it's an accident. It's a crash. So when we do crash analysis, we also look at variable factors. Why are accidents happening? You see, sometimes people say, oh, this road, there is, spirit or something. No. Everything has a cost. Probably the road is too small. Probably the visibility is not there. Probably the road signage is not there. Probably the atmosphere or the weather conditions. Those are all factors. But every accident has a cost. So let's focus on that. So that's why when people make accidents, they come and analyze this scene and draw up their conclusions. So that's why we call it crashes, but not accidents. So when somebody says, oh, it's just an accident or a mistake or designed by God, no. There are different elements that are actually put in place to be able to deal with that.
Definitely. Now, from now on, I wouldn't say accidents. I would only call it accident if it is an accident. But other than that, I would keep using the word crashes. Crashes. And then, so, okay, talking about crashes here, especially within residential areas. Would you agree if someone says that our roads, for instance, in most part of Africa, especially in the Gambia, are designed for cars, vehicles, instead of people? I say this because there is an argument that when roads are constructed within our societies, there is always, let's say, there is no bicycle lane created, there is no footpath created, there is no parking space created, and then it indirectly forcing people to come and create those spaces for themselves artificially, and then this cannot match with vehicles, and then it could lead to a lot of fatalities, a lot of crashes, and here and there. So would you agree to that our roads are generally designed for vehicles and forgetting people in mind?
Very, very interesting question. You see, I like this question because it reminds me a lot. You see, in urban planning, a sustainable community is a community that encapsulates well-being of people, the dwellers, the pedestrians, those sitting by. So if a community is designed in such a way that you have all of it as roads, highways or main roads, speed 70 kilometers, kids will be scared to even go out. And there's a book called Fighting Traffic. The professor said in that book that, our communities have been taken away. Kids no more play around communities. They no more go out and visit friends. If your child goes out of your road, you are shouting, come inside,
because you are afraid of what can happen.
A demon is outside. A demon, that's what he actually described as a vehicle. Because if your child goes, before you know it, pam, the driver's speeding. Yeah? So a sustainable transportation planning should inject not only pedestrians. Pedestrian walkway should be there. Cycling should be encouraged. Even people with disabilities,
Should
the
be catered
visually
for.
impaired, the women, the old people, their walking space should be created. So we don't only create roads for vehicles. In fact, that's not sustainable because in general mobility, it has to be, we have to have what we call active mobility, meaning mobilities that are done without machines or without vehicles, like walking, like biking, jogging. These are all other forms of.
And these are necessary things
These
that
are
we need
necessary.
in our lives.
Exactly, for sustainability in terms of health benefits and things like that. But when we make all our society vehicle, we call it motorization. And the new concept towards that is called demotorization. We have to what? Demotorize. Because there is vehicle proliferations. The car ownership is actually increasing. If people have disposable incomes, you start working
One of the
3-4
first
years,
things, one of
it's
the
car.
first things you buy is a
It's
vehicle.
car. Look, we need to delete that mentality. It's not all about cars. But you know, that mentality has been injected in people because of the infrastructural conditions that we have. Because if you don't have a car, you are not likely to go to work on time. So that's why people say, oh, every Tom, Dick, and Harry said, let me have a car. But should everybody have a car? No. Should everybody be in a car? No. A lot of people need to be on bikes. A lot of people need to be walking for short distances. That's why the concept of 15 minutes communities actually come in. How do we create a community in which the people around can access wherever they want to access within 15 minutes?
Wow, that would be a
Yes.
special
So that I
community.
will not leave Brikama rushing to Banjul daily. Meaning that if I'm in Brikama, all the things that I need in Brikama is within. The markets, the hospitals, my workplace. You see, traffic will be minimized. Pollution will be minimized. Accidents will be minimized. Because people are walking. In other countries like Europe, Europe has done greatly in terms of dealing with sustainable transport. But America is opposite, actually, US. Because US is more of motorized. Everybody have a vehicle. If you don't have a car, but you don't have a house, but you have a car. Because it's part of the economic system. You need to have it because it's a system that actually creates that. But in the Gambia, let's look at it. For instance, you are walking. You say, oh, Mohammed, this guy is a strand. He's stingy, you know. This guy is just... No. Mohammed is
So the society is indirectly forcing every one of us to look at vehicles as one of the most important necessities.
That is it. Look, and then that is a sign of poverty. A society where everybody have a car is a poor society from the spectrum of transport sustainability. In advanced worlds, public transportation is what rich and then the poor uses. In Britain, for instance, the red buses are there. The rich and they all use red buses. In Germany,
that minimizes the use of personal vehicles.
yes,
And, then,
and they do what they call disincentivizing people for cars. They make operating a car very difficult for you. They will not say, don't buy your car, Mohammed, but we are going to deal with you when you want to have a car. We are going to put huge road tax, parking levies, tolling systems, for you. So when you calculate, okay, if I want to go to Banjul, I have to pay for the tolling systems. I have to pay for the parking systems. The subsidies for fuel is not with me. So you see, they will discourage you.
So you then prefer to use a public transport.
Public transport. Because they know that public transport is the feature. But me, every Tom, Dick, and Harry having a car, you alone in your car, your carbon footprint, in fact, is a question. Because you are burning how much fuel you alone. The climate change, that's not sustainable. And the country is like 2-3 million now. We are moving. So if we keep moving, meaning that the car ownership is going to increase, and that the car ownership is not increasing alongside with the road infrastructure. Every day we are importing cars. But how long do you see a new road being constructed or a parking facility being so meaning that's why you see congestion is coming in. That's another factor. Vehicle importation policy, we have to review that. Not every kind of vehicle can come into this country, to be quite honest with you. In fact, sustainability, from the spectrum of sustainability, we are doing the opposite when it comes to the fleet of vehicle coming in. If you buy a new car, for instance, it's extremely expensive to clear it from the ports. And it should be cheaper for a new car because that new car emits less. That new car is not likely to have a breakdown in the middle of the traffic to cause congestion. That new car is having the braking systems, the safety elements is okay to an extent than an old car that have run for like 15, 20 years. You still import it in the country. Before you know it, it start having issues in the middle of the traffic. Pollution. It start hitting people because there is brake failure. So you see, we are doing opposite. All cars that should be imported in this country should be very expensive.
So it should be difficult to bring in an
old
than
car.
a new
But
car.
here it's cheaper to bring in an old car than a
Than a
new
new
car.
car.
And in some countries, even within Africa here, some countries, if a car moves for about 7 years, they don't allow it in their country. Some importation age policies have 10 years, some have 7 years. But I'm not aware of any, importation policy age in this country where when they say the car is like 10 years, it can't come in. So meaning that we are just importing any rickety of a car. And for that car to hit the street, when we say, oh, at the end of the day, we say the traffic is congested.
But we are not looking into what is really causing the
Causing,
congestion.
that is a part and parcel of the congestion. So to actually use that also to encourage public transport, people importing buses should be cheaper. Because some buses take 66 passengers. So that 66 passenger, that clears 66 people. It's equivalent to how many cars? Like this 7 passenger. You know, these 7 passengers that have been proliferated recently. I said this some time ago. I said these cars are contributing to traffic congestion. Somebody look at me and say, I say yes. Because it's just 7 passenger. You pick people, 7 people from Brikama to Banjul, 7 people.
How many more people?
How many more people are there? And that car is occupying that road width. It's occupying that space. It's that parking. Hello.
That could have been used by a bus that can carry 10 times that.
10 times you've seen. But how do we actually encourage buses to come in? Importation. If I know that, okay, I'm going to have duty waiver probably, or pay something that is minimal, to import a bus, I can bring 2 or 3 buses. Investors can bring 3 or 2 buses and put it in Brikama. But the constraint for that too is people are concerned with travel time. If I get into the bus, how long will I get to Banjul? That's where the BRT lanes come in. You have designated lanes for the buses. The OIC can be a good example. The new roads that have been constructed recently, I said to someone, okay, there are 3 lanes. If we are going to commission these roads, let's commission 2 and leave the first one at this side, the other one this side, for vehicles that are heavy occupancy, buses, or vehicles that takes a passenger of maybe 40 or 30 to use that. Trucks to use that. Long vehicles, heavy vehicles to use that, so that the free flow of traffic will be enhanced. But when you have all kinds of old, long vehicles, new vehicles,
all using
this, there's going to be a problem. That's why.
It's like even with the addition of the OIC roads, we're still going to have the same problems if we maintain the same system we have.
I said that, most definitely. You see, the OIC, when people say, oh, the OIC roads are coming, traffic is going to be eased. I said, yes. Transport system is not only about the infrastructure, but the strategies and the methods and the management that is actually being applied to control that, to maintain it. If we have a very beautiful road here, we actually open all the lanes. In 2-3 months' time, you find out that people are queuing. There are queuings here. Because, people have to cross, because it's in a built environment. People are to cross. And then if the speed is 40 kilometers or 50 kilometers here, people must cross. So when people are crossing, you have to wait. So it will create queues. So before you know it, people start having problems on this road. And they say, but this is a new road. Yes, it's a new road. That's why we believe, as transport specialists, that building new roads will not necessarily solve traffic congestion. That's what people thought previously. That, if this is congested, let's build a new road. But if you build that new road 3-4 months, that new road is also congested. Why? Because we are human beings. That's what we call induced demand. Induced demand is, for instance, it will attract people towards it. Somebody using Brikama Highway, when you know that this place is free, a friend will say, why don't you use this? Let's use it. So you see, everybody is coming. Somebody whose car is at the garage on repairs, he just kindle his car. He say, this road, I can use my car. Somebody who decided to park his car because the traffic is a lot, he will bring. You see, before you know it, the road
is as full as any other road
so
used to be.
In a nutshell, it's not about the infrastructure only. The management and then the strategies that are actually put in place to be able to maintain that is quite essential for us to have a sustainable mobility plan.
That is important. It's something that we really need to look into, and I think like in platforms like this, we really need to raise this awareness. And I'm hopeful that not just within the Gambia, even outside of the Gambia, here in Africa, some of these things are really important, because transportation is that key as far as development is concerned. But also looking at the sustainability aspect of transportation should be at the cornerstone of every decision making that we do. So like we have lots of problems as far as transportation is concerned, but on the rivers we have a lot more benefits. And then so before we can emphasize and talk more on the benefits, I would like us to take a quick break, and thereafter we can talk about the benefits. Hello and welcome. This is the Sustainability Track on African Renaissance TV, and I am your host, Mohamed Dibaji. The Sustainability Track builds on the TV's mission to provide useful information to our viewership. TST airs every Tuesday at 9 p.m. on ARTV network. This show features informed guests who offer insight, debate, and evaluate various issues on sustainability in Africa. Do join me as I bring you exclusive interviews and discussions. Welcome back from that short commercials. If you are just watching, this is the Sustainability Track. I'm coming your way from the African Renaissance TV. And our topic of discussion here is transport systems and sustainability. Mr. Jammeh, yes. So on the issue of the importance, the important benefits of transportation, I would like you to talk about some of the key benefits of a good transport system.
Okay. The importance of transport is undoubted. To be quite honest with you, without transportation, nothing will happen. Nothing will work.
Things will be at a standstill.
Yes, for me to be here, I took the transport system, right? So now, to just to tell you a synopsis of what it actually entails to have a good, and then the eminence and the significance of a transport system in a country's economy. There's a professor called Edwin Welfred. He says immobility perpetuates poverty, meaning that when people are not mobile, they will be poor. Because wherever you are, your workplace, your office, your shop, you have to take a mode of mobility. And even you are walking is a mode of mobility. In fact, walking is the first mean mode of transport. We call it foot mobile in the olden days. So you have to walk to your shop. So if you don't have that mode of transportation, you'll be poor. So that's why you find out sometimes rich people travel more. Big business tycoon, they travel more because mobility actually enhances your level of income. Because usually, geographically, where you are not within that location. Probably we are all here, but that's not where we sleep. We all have to take a mobility and go. That you are doing your work. So if without a mobility, you can't come here. You understand? In terms of the country's economy also, with all the SDGs, for instance, transport is the cornerstone. In fact, without it, we can't achieve even the first two aspects of the SDG, the hunger and poverty. Because if you, for instance, have a farm, the products have to be transported. From the manufacturing industry, it has to be transported to the warehouses, to the markets, to the stores. So how do we actually deal with the issue of hunger and poverty if there is no transport aspect? So that's why most of the constraints in the African continent is transport, because the rice field is far. If the rice are ripe, it has to come out. If the road is actually a problem, the food will be expensive. Look at, for instance, taxis. If you are in Brikama, you want to go to Jaliba Johnson, that road is not good during the rainy season. The taxi is extremely expensive.
They will charge higher.
They will charge you. When I was coming, they are constructing the road. The guy told me that here from turntable to here is like 400. I said, what? Because the road is deplorable. So that is the essentiality of transportation. It is cross-cutting. Every aspect of our lives, transport is the first thing. Because when we don't move from one place to another, we can't get to where we are going. So regarding the question regarding mobility when it comes to the OIC, OIC is a very important project. It's going to enhance this mobility in a sense that it's going to increase the road width. It's going to actually, it has created employment already because a lot of thousands of people are also employed there. It's going to create other benefits when we have actually learned how to manage it, because we can digitize it, for instance, in terms of digitizing the infrastructure, the transport infrastructure, the traffic signals, for instance. We can look at traffic signals, because most of the traffic signals are dead here. But OIC can have that component where we can have sensor traffic signals that will look at the queue length, do the green time for you. We don't need police to be actually waving in and out. No, that's why a lot of incidents have happened around that. You've heard, I think, some time ago, a police was involved in an accident, a traffic police officer. Gone are those days. That's in the history of traffic management. That's where people stand with green flags, red flags, you waving. But that's what we're still doing. So that is going to be out of it. So the OIC project can be the genesis in which we can revolutionize our transport system by even incorporating smart roads now. Do you know that we can have smart roads in which, if there is congestion, those at the traffic monitoring station can actually know that there is congestion because you have sensors. When vehicles stood for some time, you will know, obviously. It can also use for travel time predictions. Traveler information system, I can be in my office, I know, oh, this road is congested. I can do that. It's just like weather forecast. Before I get into the traffic, I know, oh, this place is congested, so let me use the other road. But there is no traveler information system, so the OIC roads can actually incorporate that. We can also look at the final sustainable method, that is the urban mobility in terms of mass transportation. The OIC can do that. That I said, we can have a BRT lane, that is a lane that is actually designated for heavy vehicles, for long vehicles, for buses, because the feature is bus transport. That is the feature. Anybody tells you the feature of mobility is cars, small vehicles, no, because the birth rate is high, people need to mobile. And then those that usually have the car, it's very difficult for them to get out of the cars and use the the public transport. But when we make the public transport achievable, when we make it sexy, when we make it comfortable, accessible, and safe, the rich are going to park their cars and join the public transport. So that's going to be a huge benefit for the country.
That is important. We have a long way to go, but then I think as far as the Gambia is concerned, like you said, the OIC project offers a good chance for us to get a lot of things right. That is important because most of this that we are saying have not been present in our current system. But this OIC project coming in as a new project offers that new approach that we can take and that can also help us understand what a good transport system is. And then this talking about the importance and the benefits that we can derive from a good transport system, not just as a country, as a continent. With a good transport system, most economists will argue that African, accessibility is possible. The growth of the African economy would be realized. And then this would be an advantage for every African out there. So that is an important thing to look at. We are somehow running out of time, so maybe I would make this the last question. In as much as I am loving the conversation, and I bet anyone listening or watching us right now would be enjoying this and would like to have a lot more of this conversation. So maybe we'll have to come up with another episode on transport exactly. But the last question I wanted to ask is, would you agree to the statement that we would need a cultural shift in how we manage our transport infrastructure as a country?
Yes, of course, because currently what we are doing is not sustainable. You know, we're talking about sustainability. You know, sustainability is dealing or solving your problems without tampering with the future needs of
without compromising the ability of the next generation.
So whatever we are doing, when it cannot last for 15, 20 years, it's not sustainable. Like from the importation policies, it's not sustainable. The proliferations of the tricycles, well, there was a time the tricycle issue came up. I was somewhere, I made a comment. It's like people say yes. I say, look, they have to be controlled. Because the tricycles, that's another topic of discussions. You know, they are listening and all those things. So that's it. Because anything that is not sustainable, anything that is going to kill a huge amount of people, we have to talk about it now. Despite there are people getting their livelihoods, you know, that's the problem. There are people who are getting their livelihood. Yes, that's true. But if you...
At what expense?
At what expense? Do you understand? There was a time we talk about, okay, I think ports, we don't need to have that queues, the ferry up and down. Why don't we bridge it? Somebody say, no. I say, why? Because congestion, the level of congestion, the cost of congestion. If you sit and wait for a vehicle for 40 minutes, your time, 40 minutes, what is the value of that 40 minutes in cash? How much are you paid monthly? When we divide it in hours, how much? So if you waste that is the cost of your congestion. How many people? Thousands. So when we
and there is a huge bad negative effect of that idle time that we have. This is where even production as a country and a continent can be affected.
That is it. Because goods are delayed, healthcare system is delayed, somebody will be stuck, an ambulance can be stuck in the traffic. The traffic is congested. The patient might die. Because transport, there should be choice. Like when you go to the supermarket, okay, I want this, this is costing, I don't want this. That's how transport should be. If I want to predict my travel time in Brickham, I should be able to have A, B, C as choices. I want to use the BRT lane, in which I can spend 30 minutes. I want to use, but here there's no choice. Whether rich, poor, all whatever, you all have to endure the same miserable condition in transport. You cannot jump, you cannot pay a tolling fee, you cannot use special lanes. No, there's no choice. Even the ambulance or the VP or the president comes, they all have to use the same thing. There are no choices. So that is not sustainable because we are growing as a country. So we look at sustainability. That's why I said the OIC can be the genesis of that. how do we actually create a designated lane to promote public transportation system? Because the proliferation of the seven-seat passengers, that is not sustainable. I'm going to tell you quite frankly. There are a bunch of them in Brikama garage, but they're just like 7, 7, 7, 7. I don't know. You have 100 people standing.
People will left
You don't
over
see a
there.
bus, but sometimes there are few buses. When a bus stands, that entire crowd is out. Just one bus. Before that bus comes, you see almost 20, 40 of them. They will overcharge you because, oh, it's just 7 passengers. So you see, there's no control. I'm talking about the control. These are all gaps. The taxis, there are no control to charge you. In other countries, they have meter. You pay per kilometer, or you pay per congestions. Or there are apps like Uber, Bolt, InDriver, and things like that. When you are going, you look at they predict the travel time, the level of congestion, if it is dark, whatever, some conditions, and they charge you. There are standards, but here there is no standard. Every driver have a, you can't even tell the driver you are driving fast. I met one last time I was in a vehicle. The driver said, one of the passengers said, driver, you are driving fast. The driver said, until for me, I don't do it. If you just talk, I just put you down. You
No,
see, that is a problem. Safety. Passengers cannot talk about their safety to the driver. So that is a problem. There are no controls. There are no driver rating. In other countries, you'd rate the driver. For the case of the apps, you'd rate the driver and tell, oh, the driver is performing good. In terms of some drivers harass the passengers. There are no systems to check those things. Some passengers harass the drivers. There are no systems. So transport is not just what we are seeing. It is an entire system. When we want to be sustainable, security is there. Some taxi drivers, they could be armed robbers who painted the picture and say, oh, I'm taxi. They go and butcher you and take you. How do we ensure that the taxi driver's database is there? When he says 009, anything that happens to you, we can track that taxi driver because his pictures, his biographies, everything is actually in the database. But transport is not the way we are seeing it. There are a lot of things for it to be sustainable because the Gambia is small, the crime rate is moderate, but in other countries it's huge. These terrorists, rebels, armed robbers, they have their vehicles. They painted taxi, they put number plates there. So when you come in, who is he? They take you somewhere, they collect everything from you. Those things will come here in the next 5, 10 years, you will see. So when we don't think beyond and deal with the issues before they come,
it is about time.
It is about time
we
we
think beyond today and beyond, in fact, beyond the next 3 years.
That is sustainability.
Talking about the future is important.
That is sustainability
like
for you.
in your own words, and those are words that we really echo here on the show, here on the sustainability track. That whatever decisions we do as stakeholders, as a society, as a continent, sustainability has to be at the cornerstone of things. And I will repeat your own words that transportation, it's not a child's play. Transportation is not just something that we can talk about in a day. And the time we have here cannot be, we cannot exhaust everything that we want to talk about. And I'm so with this, everyone here from the sustainability track would plead with you, and so that we can have another episode on transportation. And I'm sure the viewers would love to have another one, but then I am afraid this is all time has committed us in today's episode. But we'll take, say, 30 seconds of a wrap up for you, final remarks.
To be here, to be invited. And I hope that this message is actually going to go across to thousands or millions of people to actually get exposed to this thing. Transportation is a system. It encompasses a lot of things that we have to look at. The road infrastructure is part of it. The driver behavior is part of it. The fleets that are coming into the country is part of it. And we should be concerned with passenger safety. The government should play a very instrumental role in determining what kind of fleets come in. Are they roadworthy? The police should enforce effectively. There are a lot of traffic violations that actually happen. The police are there to enforce. I think Gambia, we have to talk about enforcement to a subsequent series and episodes. But that is another part of transport issues, enforcement of transport regulations. Do you understand? The Ministry of Transport is actually there. They are designing policies, the road licensing schemes that they talk about initially. It was difficult to implement it, but that is a very good scheme. And I'm going to encourage all drivers to actually cooperate with the Ministry of Transport for these kind of schemes to be rolled out.
Thank you once more for coming on to the sustainability track. Within this short duration, but you were able to make up the call, and then I can be a witness that you've done justice to the topic, and we are looking forward to having you on subsequent episodes, especially on transportation. This is all we have for you here from the sustainability track, coming your way from the African Renaissance TV. And this episode has been broadcasting from the Badala Park Beach Hotel from the Gambia here at Kotu. Until we come your way with more interesting episode of the sustainability track and more interesting programs coming your way from the African Renaissance TV. I am Mohamed Bibaji.